Yahoo Finance, 3rd of July 2023, Egypt receives satellites built and funded by China as a step toward its aspirations for the space sector. Egypt received satellites constructed and funded by China in a knocked-down state so that it could assemble them and claim credit for their creation. Egypt, a country in North Africa that aspires to become the continent's space industry superpower, can now construct, integrate, and test satellites thanks to Chinese assistance. On June 25, Egypt received two Sat-2 satellite project prototypes supported by China. The Egyptian Space Agency has a facility nearby the nation's new capital city where the satellites will be assembled and tested. China also funds this facility. China gave the project a grant of $74 million and contributed $68 million toward constructing the satellite assembly, integration, and test center. During the past 3 months, engineers from Egypt and the China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation have tested 3 Sat-2 satellite models, 2 prototypes and a flight model. Liao Liqiang, the ambassador of China to Egypt, predicted that Egypt would be the first country in Africa to construct, integrate, and test satellites. Liao stated at the ceremony to present the grant to the Egyptian government that Egypt is the first nation to which China handed over the satellite cooperation project outside of China and the first nation with which China collaborated to complete the satellite's large-scale trial operation. He declared that Beijing was eager to cooperate with Egypt to enhance space cooperation and further solidify their strategic alliance. In October, the satellite is anticipated to launch from China. Temedeo Onyeshun, a space scientist from Nigeria, claimed that China had significantly contributed to collaborating with African institutions to improve their space programs. He stated that in addition to Egypt, China had bilateral space technology, training, and ground infrastructure partnerships with 13 other African nations. According to Onyeshun, China is constantly looking into new economic prospects on the continent, much like other nations like Russia, the US, and Europe. He claimed that everyone wanted a piece of the expanding African space business, which brought in roughly $20 billion in revenue annually. He added that this outlines China's long-term agenda on the continent and is also crucial for international diplomacy. Rania al-Mashat, the Egyptian Minister of International Cooperation, expressed her gratitude to China for its assistance during last month's ceremony. She added that the new satellite center will greatly boost research, development, measurement, and monitoring. The advanced devices and effective technology are important for Egypt as they open a gateway for cooperation with Africa in this field, she said. Dr. John Calabrese, a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute in Washington, said that since the Egyptian Space Agency's establishment in 2019, it has sought to increase cooperation on space science and technology with a variety of countries, including the US, Russia, France, India, and most recently South Africa. Last year, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi advanced plans to create an expensive space city on the outskirts of Cairo to improve Egypt's economy and reputation. A deal was made to erect the African Space Agency's main office there. Calabrese added that the satellite project with Egypt was not China's first effort into space collaboration with an African country. China has aided in the launch of communication satellites by Nigeria, Ethiopia, Algeria, and Sudan. He emphasized the 2 levels of competition simultaneously at work and the projected economic benefits for African countries building their space capabilities. Key African nations are racing to become industry leaders, and China and France, in particular, are competing for contracts in Africa. He claimed that Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative, a component of the so-called Spatial Information Corridor, looked to have added yet another layer to China's pursuit of space cooperation in Africa. According to Calabrese, the Belt and Road has changed along with its space cooperation aspects, moving from selling bulky hardware to selling services and digital applications. According to Calabrese, the U.S. may worry about Africa's reliance on Chinese-provided services. Additionally, there would be financial losses if African countries use the Chinese Beidou global positioning system rather than the US GPS or the European Galileo systems. He claimed that high-resolution satellite photography might provide several advantages, including monitoring crop water consumption, a crucial advancement for nations with expanding populations that struggle with food and water insecurity. According to independent space industry researcher Rory Song Moyo, China and Egypt have made several agreements about space, including the satellite project. According to Moyo, a Zimbabwean now residing in South Africa, Egypt is ideally situated to serve as a hub for satellite assembly since it has access to Europe and Africa and is flanked by the Red Sea to the east and the Mediterranean Sea to the north. The most of any country. According to her, China had 28 space agreements with African countries, ranging from Earth observation and capacity building to satellite navigation, communication, and astronomy. Agreements were made at the 2021 Forum on China-Africa Cooperation in Dakar, Senegal, to advance space technology cooperation, support the development of Africa's space infrastructure, and use the space sector to promote social development and raise people's living standards.